Hey guys, so this is the first question on the test review, and it wants us to write an inverse. That f to the -1, that means the inverse of f of x. So there are just 3 steps. There are change the function, change f of x to be y, switch x and y, and then solve for y. So this is really y equals 2/3 x plus 4, but we're going to switch the x and the y, right? Okay. So it's going to be x equals 2/3 y plus 4, then we're going to solve for y. So I'm going to start by subtracting 4 from both sides. So x minus 4 is equal to 2/3 y. And then we need to multiply 2/3 by its reciprocal to cancel it out by 3/2, right? And then what you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So I'm just going to put this over here. So if I'm going to rewrite it, though, I'm going to rewrite it as f inverse of x is equal to 3/2 times x minus 4. Okay? What do you expect f of f inverse of x to equal and y? Well, if they are truly inverses of each other, we need to prove that by composing it. And normally we call the inverse like g of x, but this time we just called it f inverse. So what we're doing here, f of f inverse of x, is we're just composing that function. And our answer should just be x because they're inverse equations. When you undo one, it turns out, you get the same output as you do the original input. So if I input x, my output should be x. That's the y behind it. And then C wants us to actually do that. So let's just actually do that. So we take our original f of x, which is 2/3 times x, but I'm just going to leave a big space because I'm going to put the whole function that is the inverse in there. And my inverse was 3/2 times x minus 4. Okay, so if you wanted to do this the long way, you could distribute this here. But since we're just multiplying out here, okay, we can cancel these out because that's just going to give us 6/6, which is just 1. Okay, and it doesn't matter which order you multiply in, and this is all multiplication, right? So that cancels out. That gives us x minus 4 plus 4, and this cancels out. So when we take f of f inverse of x, okay, we just get x back. So we have proven, although you know what I say, you have to do it both ways. But Ms. Stewart says we don't have to do it one way, or she only expects you guys to do it one way, so I'll go with that. We have proven that they are, in fact, inverses of each other. All right, question number 2, write an equation. Oh, so it's the same thing. So we're just going to follow the same steps. We're going to make it y instead, and 3x minus 1/2, but we're going to switch the x and the y. And then we're going to solve for y. Although I guess you could solve for x, and that would also be the inverse. You can skip this step, but we don't like to do that. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply both sides by 2 first to get rid of the denominator. So 2x equals 3y minus 1. Then we're going to add 1 to both sides. And then divide both sides by 3. So I'm going to switch that up, actually. I'm going to divide by 3, but I'm going to put my y on this side. I can't stand having my y on the right side. So y is equal to 2x plus 1/3. And then if you rewrite that correctly, since we are trying to find the inverse, h inverse of x is equal to 2x plus 1/3. Okay, now we've got 2, and it wants us to write and simplify expressions for the following functions. Okay, so that's pretty easy here. A says 2 times f of x, but my f of x is really x squared minus 8x. And then minus g of x, and g of x is really just 3x minus 1. And you guys, all of these questions on the test are going to be multiple choice. So although technically this is correct, my best guess is that the answer on the test is going to ask you to simplify it more. So I'm going to distribute this 2. So I have 2x squared minus 16x minus 3x minus 1 is really 2x squared minus 19x minus 1. And I guess you could try to factor that if there's a way, just because what if it's factored in the answer? But I don't know if it's factorable. Are there 2 numbers that multiply together to be -2 and add up to be -19? No, there's no way, because it's only going to be 1 and 2. So we're not going to worry about factoring it since we can't. That'll be our most simplified version there. All right, let's do B, and we're going to multiply these 2 equations together. So, and since they're both binomials, you guys know we're going to have to, there's f of x times g of x. We're going to have to use an area model or FOIL or however you guys learned how to do it. We've always done area model in my class, but I don't care which way you do as long as you get the correct answer. But I like our little squares. So we have x squared minus 8x, 3x minus 1. 3x times x squared is 3x cubed. 3x times 8x, negative 8x, is negative 24. Check my mental math. I'm going quick. Squared. I have to get Arnie to obedience training tonight. X squared times negative 1 is negative x squared, and this would be positive 8x. So if you multiply them together, my best guess is actually it'll just look like this one. But if you wanted to actually multiply it out, you would get 3x cubed minus 25x squared plus 8x. You could take an x out of there, and the reason I keep doing these things is because in a multiple choice test, you're not sure which answer they're going to give you, right? You could take an x out, and then you would have 3x squared minus 25x plus 8. And then you could actually try to factor that on the inside. So are there 2 numbers that will multiply together to give us 24 and add up to be negative 25? Let's see, 24, 6, and 4, 8, and 3, 12, and 2, 20. Oh yeah, actually we can. This would be negative, what, 24 times negative 1. Actually would factor it. In which case this would give us, our trinomial would turn into this binomial where we put 3x squared here, we put positive 8 here, then we take these, we do negative 24x here and negative 1x here. And then if we factor it out, I can factor out a 3 from both 3 and 24 and an x. And 3x times 1 will give me 3x squared, and 3x times negative 8 will give me negative 24x. And oops, this needs to be an x here. Did you guys catch that? And then x times negative 1 would be negative 1x here. So technically, this could be an answer. If it's multiple choice, it could be 3x minus 1 times x minus 8. Okay, so I just wanted to do it a couple ways in case that answer wasn't there. And then let's do this last one. And it wants us to compose, take g of f of x Okay. Sorry, I feel like I need to make that clean. Okay. G of f of x would mean I'm going to write g of x, but when I have x, I'm going to leave a big space because that's where I'm going to put f of x, and that's going to be x squared minus 8x. Okay, and that could be one answer. That could be an answer. It could be 3. I could distribute my 3x squared minus 24x minus 1. And this one I do not think is factorable, so I think that's the farthest that we can go. So I know for sure that these are not inverse functions because I would have been able to simplify it down to x, and I cannot do that. Okay. Next question. Write an equation for g of f of x. So I'm going to write the outside one and leave an inside open. So my outside function g of x is the square root. So g of f of x equals the square root. But where there is an x, instead I am going to put all of f of x, which is 2x minus 5. Okay, and then let's simplify it just for fun and see what happens. This is actually the square root of 2x because these cancel, right? And I don't think we can get it any farther than that, in which case these are not inverse functions because it doesn't reduce down to just x. All right, this is an ugly one. Let me look down because I don't have enough time on this one to do it, so maybe I can do... Nope, we will do those two on the next one, and it'll be just a little video of piecewise functions.